Kyle has a real passion for restoration work. He's been watching YouTube videos for 2 weeks. I never thought I'd be writing one of these posts, but after everything that's happened over the past 8 months, I need to get this off my chest. Maybe some of you have dealt with similar family dynamics and can relate. Fair warning, this is going to be long, but I promise every detail matters for understanding just how insane this situation became. My name's Marcus, I'm 33, and I've been a licensed electrician for 12 years. I run my own electrical contracting business during the week and do custom furniture restoration on weekends. Last year, my uncle Roy passed away from pancreatic cancer after a brief but brutal battle. Roy was my dad's older brother, and honestly, more of a father figure to me than my actual dad ever was. When I was a kid dealing with my parents' messy divorce, Roy was the one who'd pick me up every weekend without fail and teach me how to use tools in his workshop. While other kids were playing video games, I was learning to read blueprints, use a lathe, and respect the craft of working with your hands. He's the reason I got into the trades in the first place, and probably the reason I'm a functioning adult today instead of another statistic from a broken home. Roy never married, never had kids of his own. He used to joke that his tools were his children and the workshop was his wife. He spent 40 years as a master carpenter, working on everything from residential homes to historical restorations. The man collected tools like some people collect stamps or wine. He had pieces from the 1920s that still worked better than modern equivalents, and he knew the story behind every single acquisition. His workshop was legendary in our family and honestly, in the entire regional woodworking community. It was a converted 3-car garage on a piece of property he owned about 20 minutes outside town, sitting on 2 acres of beautiful wooded land. We're talking about a fully equipped woodworking shop with industrial-grade equipment, a separate bay for metalworking, and enough organized storage to make any craftsman weep with joy. The main workspace alone was 1,800 square feet, with 14-foot ceilings, industrial ventilation, and 3-phase power for the serious machinery. When Roy's lawyer called me in for the will reading, I discovered he'd left me the workshop, the property it sat on, and all the tools and equipment inside. He'd also left me a letter, which I'll never share the full contents of, but one line stays with me: Marcus, you're the only one who understands that these tools aren't just things, they're the legacy of every project they've ever built. Keep them working. The house went to my dad, which made sense as it was the family home they'd grown up in. There were some monetary gifts to other relatives, including $5,000 each to his nephews and nieces on his sister's side. I was floored by the workshop inheritance. The property alone was worth around $200,000 according to the recent assessment, and the tools and equipment? Easily another $150,000, including some vintage pieces that collectors would kill for. There was a 1947 Delta Unisaw that Roy had completely restored, still running like a dream. A complete set of Lie-Nielsen hand planes. A 1960s Powermatic lathe that was basically the Rolls-Royce of lathes. My dad seemed genuinely happy for me at first. We stood in the workshop after the will reading, and he actually got emotional. Roy always said you were the son he never had, he told me. He'd be so proud knowing this place is in your hands. He knew how close Roy and I were, and he said it was only right that I got the workshop. He even helped me move some of my own tools in that first week. That sentiment lasted exactly 3 weeks, until my stepmother Linda found out the full value of what I'd inherited. The cast of characters. Let me paint you a detailed picture of the family dynamics here, because understanding the personalities involved is crucial to understanding how this escalated so quickly. My dad, Thomas, is 59 and works as an insurance adjuster. He's the kind of man who avoids conflict at all costs, which made him terrible at standing up to my mom during their marriage, and apparently makes him equally terrible at standing up to his second wife. He remarried Linda when he was 52 and she was 42, about 7 years ago. They met at a grief support group. Dad was there after Roy's wife, my aunt, passed, and Linda was there after her divorce, though she presented it as grief counseling. Linda, now 49, is what you'd charitably call a force of nature, and what you'd honestly call a manipulative narcissist. She works part-time as a receptionist at a dental office, but her real job is managing everyone else's life and making sure her son gets every advantage possible. She brought along Kyle, then 22, from her previous marriage. Kyle, now 29, is, well, let's just say he's never held a job for more than 6 months in his entire adult life. His resume is a graveyard of failed ventures: dog walking service, lasted 2 months until he lost someone's expensive poodle; food truck, never got past buying the truck, which still sits rusting in Linda's driveway; cryptocurrency consulting, I don't think he ever understood what blockchain actually was; dropshipping business, made exactly 3 sales, all to Linda's friends; and most recently, social media influencer, with 347 followers, most of whom are clearly bots. Each venture was funded by Bank of Mom, and increasingly, Bank of My Dad. Linda immediately started working on my dad about the unfairness of the will. According to her, Kyle had always admired Uncle Roy's workshop. Kyle met Roy exactly twice at family functions and spent both times on his phone, and had been planning to ask Roy to mentor him. Roy couldn't stand Kyle and once told me, "That boy has all the work ethic of a retired house cat." The real kicker. Kyle had apparently been watching YouTube videos about car restoration for 2 weeks and decided that was going to be his next career move. Not apprenticing with someone, not taking classes, just watching YouTube and deciding he was ready to be a professional restoration expert. The campaign begins. The manipulation started subtly. About a month after the will reading, I got a text from Linda. "Hi Marcus. Hope you're doing well. Kyle mentioned he'd love to learn more about woodworking. Since you have Roy's workshop now, maybe you could spend some time teaching him? Family helping family." Slightly smiling face. I responded politely that I was pretty busy with work, but maybe Kyle could sign up for the woodworking classes at the community college. Her response was immediate. "Oh, those are so expensive. And Kyle learns better one-on-one. I'm sure Roy would want you to share his knowledge." The texts escalated over the next 2 weeks. "Kyle's really passionate about learning the trades. It would mean so much to Tom if you helped his stepson. That workshop is so big. Surely there's room for Kyle to have a small space for his restoration business. It seems unfair that you get such a valuable inheritance when Kyle is struggling to start his business. Families should support each other. Kyle is your brother now." I talked to Tom and he agrees Kyle should have access to the workshop. That last one was a lie, which I discovered when I called my dad. He sounded exhausted. "Marcus, I never said that. Linda's been on me about this for days. She thinks maybe Kyle could pay you rent to use part of the workshop." "Dad, I'm already using the entire space. I have 3 furniture restoration projects going, and I use the metalworking bay for electrical panel fabrication." I know. Could you maybe just talk to Linda? Let her feel heard." That was my first mistake, agreeing to a family meeting about the workshop. The family meeting disaster. The meeting was held at my dad's house on a Sunday afternoon. Linda had prepared a full presentation. I'm not joking, she had a PowerPoint on her laptop about Kyle's custom car restoration business plan. The slides included stock photos of classic cars, not cars Kyle owned or had ever worked on. Profit projections showing $500,000 in first-year revenue. A space allocation proposal that would give Kyle 60% of my workshop. A payment plan where Kyle would start paying rent once the business is profitable. Kyle sat there nodding along, occasionally chiming in with gems like, "I've been studying restoration techniques, watching YouTube, and I already have several interested clients," his Xbox Live friends who said his idea sounded cool. I let them finish their entire presentation before speaking. "No." Linda's face went red. "What do you mean, no? You haven't even considered it." "I don't need to consider it. It's my workshop. I'm using it for my businesses. Kyle has no experience, no training, no clients, and no money to pay rent." Kyle jumped in. "That's not fair. You got all this for free. Uncle Roy didn't even leave me anything. You met Roy twice, Kyle. And both times you complained about being bored and left early." The meeting devolved from there. Linda accused me of being selfish, greedy, and not a real family member. She said Roy would be spinning in his grave, knowing I wouldn't share. That really set me off, and I told her exactly what Roy thought of Kyle, including the house cat comment. My dad tried to mediate, suggesting compromises that made no sense. Maybe Kyle could use it on weekends? When I do my restoration work. Maybe just store some equipment there? The thin end of the wedge. Maybe you could mentor him for a few months, so he could claim he had a right to be there. I left with Linda screaming that I'd regret this, and Kyle muttering about unfair privilege. Ironic coming from someone who'd never worked a full year in his life. The first red flag. About 2 months after Roy passed, I arrived at the workshop on a Saturday morning at 7 a.m. to find Kyle's beat-up Honda Civic in the driveway. But it wasn't just Kyle. There was a locksmith van there too. I pulled up to find Kyle standing at the door with the locksmith, who had already drilled out my deadbolt and was preparing to install a new lock. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, probably louder than necessary but certainly quieter than I wanted to. Kyle had the audacity to look annoyed at my presence. "Mom said you were going to give me a key, but since you're being difficult about it, I figured I'd just change the locks so we both have access. This way it's fair." The locksmith, an older guy named Carl, stopped what he was doing. "Sir, can I see some identification showing you own this property?" Kyle fumbled, Well, it's my family's place. My stepbrother here inherited it, but we're sharing it. I pulled out my phone, showed Carl the deed I'd photographed, and my driver's license. This is my property, solely owned by me. This person has no legal right to be here or to change these locks. Carl looked at Kyle with disgust. You told me this was your building and you'd lost the keys. That's fraud, son. Kyle tried to backpedal. It's a family misunderstanding. Tell him, Marcus. The only misunderstanding is you thinking you can break into my property. Carl, what's the damage to my door? Carl examined it. I've drilled the lock, so you'll need a new deadbolt. About $200 for a good one, installed. I can do it now if you'd like, and this young man can pay for it since he hired me under false pretenses. Kyle went pale. I don't have $200. I looked at Carl. Install the new lock, best one you've got. I'll pay, and I'll be filing a police report for attempted breaking and entering and destruction of property. Kyle tried to flee, but Carl blocked him. Not so fast. You owe me for the service call. That's $150, due now. While Kyle called his mommy crying about needing money, Carl installed my new lock, a high-security Medeco deadbolt, and gave me his card. If anyone else shows up claiming to own this place, call me. I'll vouch for what happened here today. The Craigslist discovery. 3 months passed with relative peace. I'd installed security cameras around the property after the locksmith incident. 8 cameras total, with motion detection and cloud storage. I'd also put up clear, private property, no trespassing signs, and installed a gate at the entrance to the driveway with a keypad lock. I thought maybe they'd gotten the message. During this time, I was busier than ever. I'd landed a contract to do the electrical work for a historic home renovation, and I had 6 furniture pieces in various stages of restoration. The workshop was humming with activity, just as Roy would have wanted. Then one of my regular clients, Jim, called me up on a Thursday evening. Hey Marcus, weird question, but are you renting out workshop space? I saw an ad on Craigslist, and it looks exactly like your place. My blood went cold. What do you mean? There's an ad for premium workshop space available for rent. The photos look like your workshop. I thought maybe you were subletting part of it. Jim texted me the link, and there it was. The ad read, Premium workshop space, perfect for auto restoration, $2,000 per month, utilities included. 600 square feet dedicated space in professional workshop. Access to professional-grade tools including table saw, bandsaw, drill press. Full welding setup. Automotive lift, coming soon. Paint booth, coming soon. Shared access to hand tools and power tools. 24/7 access available. Perfect for car restoration, woodworking, or metalworking. If available, immediately contact Kyle for viewing. The photos were clearly taken from outside looking through the windows, but they showed my tools, my workspace, even some of my current projects. Kyle had listed my $3,000 SawStop table saw, my $4,000 Powermatic bandsaw, and my welding setup as available for use. But here's the truly infuriating part. Kyle had already scheduled 3 viewings for the upcoming weekend. He'd been corresponding with potential renters for 2 weeks, promising them tours of his family's workshop and immediate move-in availability. One guy had already sent a $500 deposit via Venmo to hold his spot. I screenshot everything, the ad, the photos, the correspondence Kyle had posted in the comments section answering questions. One person asked, "Do you own this space?" Kyle had responded, "It's a family property that I'm managing." The legal response. I called a lawyer that same day, specifically one who specialized in property law and fraud cases. Her name was Jennifer, and she was recommended by Carl the locksmith, of all people. "This is clear fraud," she said after reviewing everything. "He's advertising property he doesn't own, collecting deposits for rentals he can't provide, and misrepresenting his relationship to the property. We need to act fast." Jennifer sent Kyle a cease and desist letter via certified mail and email. The letter outlined, Kyle had no ownership interest in the property. He was committing fraud by advertising it for rent. He needed to immediately return any deposits collected. Any further attempts to access or advertise the property would result in criminal and civil action. He had 48 hours to confirm in writing that he'd comply. She also contacted Craigslist's legal department to have the ad removed and reported Kyle's actions to the State Attorney General's Office for fraud investigation. The response was swift and predictable. Linda called me screaming before Kyle had even received the certified letter, meaning she was monitoring his email. "You're suing your own brother over a harmless advertisement." Linda, He's committed fraud. He's taken money from people for something he doesn't own. He was just testing the market. He was going to talk to you about it. He took a $500 deposit from someone. He'll return it. This is all a misunderstanding. You're destroying our family over nothing. My dad called an hour later. Marcus, Linda's hysterical. She says you're trying to put Kyle in jail. Dad, Kyle committed fraud. He advertised my property, took money from strangers, and was planning to give tours of my workshop. What would you have me do? Maybe just ask him to stop? I did that 3 months ago when he tried to change my locks. He escalated. This is on him. Update 1. The break-in. 2 weeks after the Craigslist incident, my security cameras alerted me to movement at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was dead asleep when my phone started pinging with motion alerts from multiple cameras. I pulled up the feed on my phone and watched in disbelief as Kyle and 2 of his buddies were attempting to pry open a window on the north side of the workshop. I immediately called 911 while pulling on clothes. I'm watching a break-in in progress on my security cameras. 3 males are breaking into my workshop at 1847 County Road 42. The dispatcher kept me on the line while I drove over, continuously providing updates on what I was seeing on the cameras. Kyle and his friends had successfully pried open the window and were climbing inside. The interior cameras showed them immediately heading for my portable tools. By the time I arrived, 2 police cruisers were already on scene with lights flashing. Kyle and his friends were in the process of loading my portable DeWalt table saw into a beat-up pickup truck. They'd also gathered my cordless tool collection, my welding helmet, and several boxes of hand tools. The officers had them at gunpoint, ordering them to step away from the vehicle. Kyle tried to play it off immediately. Officers, this is a misunderstanding. This is my family's workshop. My stepbrother owns it, but my mom said I could borrow some tools for a job tomorrow. The lead officer, Sergeant Mills, looked at me as I approached. Sir, can you identify yourself? I showed my ID and the property deed on my phone. I'm Marcus Thompson. I own this property solely. That man is my father's stepson, Kyle. He has no right to be here, and certainly no permission to take anything. I have a cease and desist letter my lawyer sent him 2 weeks ago, and I have security footage of them breaking in through that window. Kyle's friends immediately threw him under the bus. The bigger one, who I learned was named Derek, immediately spoke up. He told us this was his family's place and he'd forgotten his key. He said his stepbrother was cool with him borrowing tools. The other friend, Tony, added, "Yeah, man, we didn't know we were breaking into someone's place." Kyle said it was all legal. Sergeant Mills reviewed my security footage on my phone, clearly showing them prying open the window and the timestamp proving it was 2 a.m. He also noted the no trespassing signs clearly visible in the footage. "Mr. Thompson, what would you like to do here?" "I want to press full charges. This is breaking and entering, attempted theft, and property damage. Plus, Kyle has already been legally notified to stay away from my property." Kyle went pale. "Marcus, come on, man. We're family. Don't do this." "We're not family, Kyle. You're my father's wife's son who tried to steal my inheritance." Kyle was arrested for breaking and entering, attempted grand theft, the tools totaled over $5,000, and property damage. His friends were initially detained but released with warnings after it became clear they'd been deceived about the nature of their tool-borrowing mission. Update 2. The escalation. Kyle got out on bail the next day. $5,000 bond with Linda putting up her car as collateral. The conditions of his bail explicitly included staying at least 500 feet away from me and my property. That lasted exactly 8 days. I wasn't at the workshop when the next incident occurred. I was across town replacing an electrical panel in a customer's house. But my cameras captured everything in crystal-clear 4K resolution, and the cloud storage meant I could watch it unfold in real time once I got the motion alerts. At 1:30 p.m. on a Wednesday, Linda and Kyle showed up in a U-Haul truck. My heart sank as I watched them walk right up to the door and Linda pulled out a key. They didn't break in this time. They walked right in like they owned the place. I later found out through my dad's tearful confession that Linda had gone through his things while he was at work, found the spare key I'd given him for emergencies, and had it copied at 3 different hardware stores until she found one that didn't ask questions. I called the police while racing to the workshop, but I was 45 minutes away. For 3 agonizing hours, I watched on my phone as they systematically robbed me. They were methodical about it. Linda had clearly made a list. They took my complete Festool track saw system, $2,000. The entire collection of Roy's restored vintage hand planes, $3,000+. My Miller welding setup including gas tanks, $4,000. Every Makita and DeWalt cordless tool I owned, $3,000. My Lie-Nielsen hand tool collection, $2,000. A Roy's personal tool chest, a Kennedy machinist box from the 1960s filled with his lifetime collection of precision tools, emotionally priceless, $5,000 actual value. But they didn't just steal, they also tried to set up Kyle's restoration shop. They brought in Kyle's pathetic Harbor Freight tool collection, set up his workspace with a folding table and a pegboard, and even hung up a professionally printed banner, K's Custom Restoration, where dreams meet reality. The sheer audacity of it took my breath away. They were literally stealing my tools while setting up Kyle's fake business in my workshop. When the police arrived, Linda and Kyle were still there, apparently planning to claim they had permission to be there. They'd even brought a fake rental agreement that Linda had forged with my signature. Detective James, who'd been assigned to the case after Kyle's first arrest, wasn't buying any of it. Mrs. Thompson, this is a forged document. We have Mr. Marcus Thompson's real signature on file, and this looks nothing like it. That's our family name too. Linda protested. I'm Mrs. Thompson. Ma'am, you're under arrest for breaking and entering, grand theft, forgery, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Kyle tried to run but didn't make it past the driveway before being tackled by an officer. He was arrested for violating bail conditions, grand theft, and breaking and entering. Update 3. The damage assessment. While Linda and Kyle were being processed, I was able to fully assess the damage they'd done. Beyond the thefts, they'd caused significant damage to the workshop. The oil stains were the worst. In trying to move my heavy machinery to make room for Kyle's restoration bay, they'd knocked over a 55-gallon drum of used motor oil I'd been storing for proper disposal. The oil had spread across approximately 200 square feet of concrete floor, seeping into cracks and under equipment. The environmental cleanup alone would cost $3,000. They damaged my $3,000 saw-stop cabinet saw trying to move it. The precision fence was bent, the cast iron table was cracked, and the blade elevation mechanism was jammed. The repair estimate came to $1,500 if the table could be salvaged, $3,500 if it needed full replacement. They'd cut several cables running to my three-phase equipment, apparently trying to install their own electrical connections. As a licensed electrician, I knew this could have killed someone. They'd partially cut through a 240V line that was still hot. The repair and safety inspection would cost $800. Multiple tools showed damage from improper handling. My precision calipers were dropped and damaged. Several chisels were chipped from being thrown into boxes. The vintage hand planes they hadn't managed to steal yet showed scratches and dings from rough handling. They'd also gone through my office area, stealing my laptop, project files, and client contact information. They'd attempted to access my business bank accounts using saved passwords on the laptop. Thankfully, two-factor authentication stopped them. All told, the theft and damage totaled over $45,000. Update 4. The family fallout. My dad finally came to see me 2 days after Linda's arrest. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 2 days. He sat in my workshop, in the one clean corner that wasn't covered in oil, and broke down completely. Marcus, I don't know what to say. I found the key missing and I suspected, but I didn't want to believe it. I actually drove by here that day but saw the U-Haul and thought maybe you'd hired movers for something. Dad, they caused $45,000 in damage and theft. They tried to steal my entire livelihood. I know. Linda called me from jail. She actually expected me to bail her out. She said you were overreacting and that Kyle deserved to use the workshop because he's family. What did you tell her? I told her she's not my family anymore. I'm filing for divorce. I've already moved my important documents to my office and opened a separate bank account. This was shocking. My conflict-avoidant father was finally taking a stand. He continued, Marcus, I've been a fool. I let Linda manipulate me because I was lonely after your mom left. I was so afraid of being alone again that I ignored every red flag. Kyle's laziness, Linda's entitlement, the way they treated you. I saw it all but pretended I didn't. Dad, you couldn't have known they'd go this far. Couldn't I? Linda's been talking about your inheritance since the day Roy died. She calculated its value down to the penny. She had Kyle watching YouTube videos about restoration specifically to create a claim to the workshop. I heard her on the phone with her sister saying, Marcus doesn't deserve all that. We'll find a way to get our share. You heard that and didn't warn me? I convinced myself I misheard. I'm sorry, son. I'm so sorry. Update 5. The legal resolution. The criminal cases proceeded over the next 4 months. Kyle, facing his second and third offenses plus bail violation, was looking at serious prison time. The prosecutor, ADA Sarah Martinez, was particularly interested in the forgery and fraud aspects. This wasn't a crime of passion or a misunderstanding, she told me. This was planned, systematic theft with attempted cover-up through fraud. We're recommending 5 years. Kyle's public defender eventually negotiated a plea deal: 18 months in minimum security prison, 3 years probation, and $45,000 in restitution. Kyle took it immediately, probably realizing he could have faced much worse. Linda's case was more complex. Her lawyer argued for first-time offender leniency, but the forgery and conspiracy charges were serious. She eventually got a plea deal: 6 months house arrest, 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and $20,000 in restitution. The civil case was separate. My lawyer Jennifer was ruthless. They deliberately destroyed your business space and stole your means of income. We're suing for actual damages, lost income, and emotional distress. Linda was forced to liquidate everything: her car, $15,000, her jewelry, $8,000, and her small retirement account, $22,000. Kyle had nothing to his name except the rusty food truck, which sold for $3,000 at auction. My dad's divorce was surprisingly quick. Linda tried to claim she deserved half of everything, but the criminal conviction destroyed her credibility. She also couldn't afford a decent lawyer after paying her criminal defense attorney. She ended up with only her personal belongings and the remaining $2,000 from her liquidated assets after paying what she could of the restitution. The restoration. Insurance covered some of the damage, about $15,000 after my deductible. I spent 2 months restoring the workshop to working condition. The oil-stained concrete had to be completely replaced in sections. The electrical system needed a full inspection and partial rewiring. The saw-stop table saw was thankfully salvageable with $1,500 in repairs. The hardest part was replacing Roy's stolen tools. Some were irreplaceable: the hand planes he'd restored with his own hands, the tool chest he'd carried to job sites for 40 years. I haunted estate sales and antique tool shows, slowly building a new collection. It wasn't the same, but I thought of it as honoring Roy's memory by giving new life to old tools just as he had. The woodworking community rallied around me in unexpected ways. Other craftsmen who'd known Roy donated or sold me tools at cost. One elderly carpenter, Frank, gave me a set of chisels that had belonged to his mentor. "Roy helped me when I was starting out," he said. "This is how we honor him." My business actually grew through the ordeal. The story spread through the contractor community, and I gained a reputation as someone who stood up for what was right. My electrical business picked up several new commercial contracts, and my furniture restoration work now has a 6-month waiting list. I also started teaching woodworking classes in Roy's honor, something he'd always talked about but never got around to doing. Every Saturday morning, I teach basic woodworking to kids from low-income families, completely free. We've made cutting boards, birdhouses, and simple furniture. One kid, Marcus Jr., yes really, shows the same natural talent I had at his age. He reminds me of myself learning from Roy all those years ago. Where they are now. Kyle is currently serving his sentence at a minimum security facility 2 hours away. According to my dad, who gets updates through the grapevine, Kyle is working in the prison wood shop. The irony isn't lost on anyone. He's finally learning actual woodworking skills, just not the way he planned. He'll be eligible for early release in 12 months with good behavior. Linda moved to Florida to live with her sister immediately after her house arrest ended. She occasionally sends me rage-filled emails about how I destroyed her family and ruined Kyle's future. I forward them all to my lawyer, who files them away in case we need another restraining order. Her sister apparently owns a small motel, and Linda works there as a cleaner, a far cry from her dreams of being supported by Kyle's successful restoration business. My dad and I have slowly rebuilt our relationship. He comes by the workshop every Sunday afternoon, and we work on projects together. Currently, we're building a dining table for his new apartment. He sold the house after the divorce, too many bad memories. Working with Wood has been therapeutic for him, and I finally have the father-son relationship I always wanted, even if it came 30 years late. "I spent so many years letting people walk over me," he told me last week while we were applying finish to the table. "First your mother, then Linda. I thought keeping the peace was the same as keeping people happy. But all I did was enable bad behavior and hurt the people who actually deserved my loyalty." Lessons learned. Looking back on this insane 8 months, I've learned some valuable lessons that I hope might help others. Document everything. Those security cameras were the best $2,000 I ever spent. Without that footage, it would have been my word against theirs. The cloud storage meant they couldn't destroy the evidence even if they'd found the cameras. Trust your instincts. From the moment Linda started asking about the workshop, something felt off. I should have been more proactive about securing the property and legally protecting myself from the start. Don't let family be a manipulation tool. Blood doesn't give people the right to your property, time, or energy. Kyle wasn't my family. He was a stranger who happened to marry into my father's life. Stand your ground. Every time I gave an inch, agreeing to the meeting, not pressing charges initially, they took a mile. Some people see kindness as weakness and will exploit it until forced to stop. Get legal help early. I should have consulted a lawyer the moment Linda started her campaign. It would have saved me thousands in damages and months of stress. Build your own family. The woodworking community has been more of a family to me than Linda and Kyle ever were. Roy understood this. That's why he left his legacy to someone who'd appreciate it, not just someone who shared his blood. The workshop is thriving now. It's not just a place where I work, it's a living monument to Roy's legacy and a testament to standing up for what's right. Every tool that turns, every project completed, every student taught is a victory over those who tried to steal it all. And the saw-stop table saw? I kept that crack in the cast iron table. Every time I see it, I remember that some damage makes us stronger, and some battles are worth fighting, no matter the cost. Roy would be proud. I know because I can feel it every time I open the workshop doors and smell the mixture of sawdust and machine oil, every time a student's eyes light up when they complete their first project, every time my dad and I work side by side in comfortable silence. This was Roy's true inheritance, not just tools and property, but the knowledge that some things are worth protecting, especially from, those who claim to be family.